Hi everybody, Colin Stevenson here. Thank you very much for joining us. Tonight I have with me Ed Maybury. Hi Ed.
Hey Colin, how are you?
Ed's awesome. I've met Ed through John Lenhart, and anyone that's been following my videos or my interviews or whatever you want to call them up until now will realise that we spoke about a few issues. Now, one of my main ones that I'm passionate about is racism. And John and I covered this already, but this is part two. And part two, we've invited Ed in with us because A, Ed's awesome, and B, Ed's got a very, very similar way of looking at it to us. So Ed's got a story for us, and I've heard it, and it touched me in a lot of ways, and it hit home very, very well. So I would like Ed, please, if you don't mind sharing your story with everybody.
Sure. So thank you, Colin, for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And you and John, I've been watching your videos. You guys have been doing a great job. And you guys are both big picture thinkers, which is great. You see the entire the entire landscape of an issue. Me, I'm a small picture thinker. I'm a perceiver teacher. And I know you and John are going to get into the intrinsic drivers later, and people will know what that means more. But because I teach in order to get people to become aware of something, and I do it in a small picture way. So you and John are big picture. You see the whole landscape. I will take one part of what you guys see, and I will just analyze the heck out of it to bring it into high definition. And then when you see it, you can make the whole picture high definition, which is awesome. And when I was watching your videos on race and racism, which of course I've been talking to John about during these very turbulent times, one thing that I wanted to get into that you big picture people maybe didn't get quite as much of is how to dissolve it through the humanity aspect of treating people like humans. So I'm going to go big picture first, and by that I want to state what is the big picture definition of racism. What is the problem with racism? The problem is when you take people or groups of people and put them into a category. You think of them in terms of a category, which is what our brains naturally do. We think in categories, and it helps us file things away efficiently. The problem with racism is we take an entire group of people and we categorize them by the least important thing about them, which is their physical appearance or where they're from, their nationality. And so we put a group of people based on the social construct of race, we put them into a category, and then we start treating human beings as a category. We don't treat them as human beings anymore. We treat them as a category, and we look at Black, white, Hispanic, Asian, we treat them as a category. So if that's the problem, then the solution to dissolve it would be to do the opposite. Instead of thinking of people as categories, start thinking of those categories as human beings. And the best way to illustrate this in my small picture way is through a story of how I inadvertently learned to dissolve this issue. And when I was growing up, I was raised by my grandparents until I was 13 years old. And they were wonderful people. I love my grandparents to death. You know, God rest their souls. They're both passed away. But my grandmother, wonderful lady in many ways, but she had a certain prejudice. She had a prejudice against Mexican people. And part of the reason was racism is taught, and she was probably taught it by her parents, because during the time when my grandmother was coming up, there was a lot of tension because there was a mass immigration of Mexican people into the United States for jobs, and they were competing for the low-paying jobs with Black people, with African Americans, and so there was some animosity there with people competing for the same jobs. And so my grandmother, she had these prejudices towards Mexicans, and when she would talk about Mexican people, she would come up with all these different pejoratives, and she would tell me about them, not directly, but she would say Mexican people are this, that, and the other. I'm not going to say specifically what the negatives are; it's not important, but she did. And I grew up in South Central LA, which at the time was 90+% Black. So I actually did not meet any Mexican people. So the only thing I knew about this category of Mexican were the pejoratives that I overheard her saying. So fast forward, I go to junior high school. Now, in my elementary school days, in my grade school days, I went to a school in our neighborhood. So it was an all Black school. In junior high, they had a program called busing, where they would take kids from the inner city and bus them out to schools in better areas. And one of the areas that they were bused to that I went to was called the San Fernando Valley. And anyone who knows Southern California, they know that San Fernando Valley is an affluent, mostly white area that is ungodly hot, which is ridiculous. I don't know why rich people decided to live there, but they did. And So I was bussed out to, you have black and brown kids from the inner city bussed out to the valley. And in order to make us more comfortable, they would assign us what they call a buddy, who would be our companion for that year, the kind of person who would hang around us and we would spend time with. So when I got to school, I saw that my buddy, I saw his name, it was Javier Rodriguez.
Okay.
And as soon as I saw that name, I'm like, okay, Mexican. So I have my category. He's going to be all these different things. And so I meet him. I was cordial to him. As I said, my grandmother, although the difference between, I believe, prejudice and racist, prejudice is all in your, is in your head. You can have these different prejudices about people. Racism is when you act on it. So while my grandmother had prejudices, if she was a sweet lady, if she had when she encountered a Mexican person, I'm sure she was cordial to them. And that's how she taught me. So I was cordial to him, but I was a little cold and a little standoffish. And he was the same to me. Javier didn't really warm up to me. And as I would find out later, it was because Javier's parents had prejudices against Black people. So he had me in a category called Black or African American. And so we would hang out because we had to, but we didn't really talk to each other. One day at lunch, we're sitting next to each other, not talking as usual, because we had to be there. And he goes into his backpack and he pulls out a comic book of the character Spider-Man. And I look over because I was a huge Spider-Man fan. So as he's reading the book, I'm kind of looking over his shoulder, like, what's going on there? And eventually I just say, hey, Javier, when you're finished with that book, because I haven't read it, would you mind if I read your Spider-Man comic book? And he looks at me and he says, you're a Spider-Man fan? I'm like, yeah, I love Spider-Man. He says, me too. He's my favorite superhero. I'm like, well, he's my favorite superhero too. And we start talking about our mutual love for Spider-Man. And we didn't even eat lunch. We spent that entire time just talking about how much we love Spider-Man. And I asked him if he had some of the same issues that I had of the comic book. He said, no. I said, I'm going to bring you some of my favorite Spider-Man issues tomorrow. And he said, okay, I'm going to bring you some of mine. So I couldn't wait to get home. I loaded my backpack with my Spider-Man comic books, and I couldn't wait for lunch because he and I made a beeline for each other. We go to lunch. I give him my books. He gives me mine, and we start talking. And Javier and I become great friends after that. That category was shattered because I no longer saw Javier in that category. I saw him as a human being who loved Spider-Man as much as I did. And that's what started to dissolve it. And again, I'm going to go even smaller pictures, then I'll come back up. But because here, I want people to understand how that little story affects racism and how it's the solution to racism. Our brains work through something called dendrites. Dendrites are these nerve clusters in our physical brain that they look like trees, and they're where all of our thoughts are contained. So every dendrite in your brain, you have billions of them, every dendrite in your brain is a thought or a concept. And the branches of that little tree, and in fact, I think dendrite is Greek for tree. That's what it's based on. And so that one tree that has a certain thought or concept branches and touches the branch of a different tree that's an associated emotion. I think John talked about this a little bit before. So a complete thought is when you have one dendrite tree concept associated with a connecting a connection and another tree, and you have a complete thought. So for example, John gives the idea a lot of ice cream, and ice cream is a thought. And you have connecting dendrites on the ice cream tree. You have connecting trees for summer, for vanilla, or for whatever, and those are connecting facts. And when I think ice cream, it'll be connected to my dessert tree, and then I have a complete thought. I want ice cream for dessert. What John will also say is, well, you won't connect it to dog crap, because that is not a connected dendrite. When you think of ice cream, you don't think of that because there's no tree connecting ice cream to dog crap, hopefully.
Yeah.
And I'll give you one more that's personal to me and probably to you too a bit, because you're Scottish, and Scotch is one of my favorite drinks. So I love drinking Scotch. So on my Scotch tree, there are connections to drinking, there's connections to sophistication, there's connections to conversation. I love having a nice glass of Scotch as I'm having a conversation. So on my Scotch tree, it'll be connected to conversation. And I'll say, you know what, I'm having a great conversation. I want a glass of Scotch, which I kind of do right now. Yeah. So that's a complete thought. Now, I also had a tree in my brain called Mexican. And the associated trees with that were the pejoratives that I overheard my grandmother saying. And so I had all those negative connections. But here's what's important is when you have that complete thought, and that is going to be the strongest connection. The strongest connection between those is the one that's going to stay in your mind the most. So if I hadn't met Javier and all I had was those negatives, then those would be the strongest connection. Scotch, conversation is the strongest. When I think of Scotch, I think of conversation more than I think of the other connections.
Yep.
So when I have the tree called Mexican, then I become friends with Javier. That was a strong connection because he and I were friends for the entire year. So that connection with Javier, that positive connection, becomes so much stronger than all the negative connections because I had never met a Mexican person before. And obviously meeting a person and experiencing things with them is going to give you a much stronger connection than any abstract concepts. And so that's how you dissolve racism, by getting to know. So I'm putting my glasses on for a second here. So here's the thing: we have to treat people like human beings and not as categories. Because when I became friends with Javier, it destroyed that category of Mexican with those bad connections because of that stronger connection.
Yep.
And that's how I could no longer think of Mexicans fully negatively, because every time I had that Mexican tree, Javier was my strongest connection there.
So when you're talking about this, so you unconsciously kind of dissolve racism or prejudice in your own brain, because racism to us, or to me, and the likes of yourself and John, it's to everybody, it's an unconscious behaviour, an unconscious thought process. And it's because of the programs on the dendrites and the trees that's actually created. So we create our own path due to the programming, you know.
Exactly.
And then what we've got now, we've got the kind of, we're looking at the Black Lives Matter, okay?
Yes.
So we're not looking like, so there's a lot of kind of fighting at the moment, but we'll go into the kind of self-esteem issues on it shortly. But at the moment, what we're looking at people fighting, categories fighting, categories protesting, and it's not really adding up, because people are fighting because they want it to dissolve, but yet they're putting themselves into that category, or they're fighting for a category. So effectively, they must be keeping this going. And that's why over the last 50 years, it always comes back round again.
It does. And here's the thing, Colin, you made a great point there. Over 50, 60 years, we've had the same problem. And the problem is, the reason we keep having these problems is because we aren't treating a human problem with human solutions. We treat each other, we're treating each other, as far as the racism thing is concerned, as animals, or we're treating each other as machines or robots or computers, not as human beings. Because how do you treat an animal? You train an animal through reward or punishment.
Yeah.
I have a dog. She's very well trained. You know why? When she was a puppy, when she did something good, I gave her a treat. When she did something bad, I'd make her sit down. That was her punishment. And it worked great for her. She's a well-trained dog. But that doesn't work for people, because people are not animals. We don't respond that way. So people who say the solution to racism is to punish the police, or to reward the police, or to punish the protesters, or reward the protesters, you're treating a human being like an animal. And if that worked, we would have resolved it. We would have solved it years ago, but we haven't. I mean, a perfect example is, if punishment worked, if treating people like animals worked, then there would be no crime. Why? Because we punish crime. And if punishment was a solution, there would never be any crime. Every criminal knows that when they commit a crime, there's a possibility they could be punished for it, but they still do it, which means treating people like animals does not work. The solution that we seem to be trying right now, that we've been trying for the last 50 years, that doesn't work, is treating human beings like machines, like computers, like robots, using logic, saying if we train better, if we train police better, if we train other people better, if we gave people more money, if we threw money at the problem, that would be better. But human beings do not work purely on logic. Computers do. Now, if I write a computer code and it's logical, then my software is going to work. If I write the code and has an error in it, it's not going to work. Very simple, because that's how computers work. But people don't work purely on logic. I mean, if you look at a person who has a prejudice, they know logically that their prejudice makes no sense. They really do. If you are a Nazi, a skinhead, a Ku Klux Klansman, if you don't think that people think that black people are inferior or less intelligent, you know that there are intelligent black people out there. You know, there are black doctors and lawyers and engineers and CEOs and astronauts. You know that you have that cognitively in your brain.
Yep.
And if logic was a solution, then that would have wiped it out. But
yep.
no one honestly expects to go up to a Nazi, a neo-Nazi, and say, hey, you know what? I know you think Black people are inferior, but there are Black doctors and lawyers and engineers and CEOs. And he would expect him to say, yeah, you know what? You're right. I'm going to stop being a Nazi today.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen. So logic and training is not going to work. If it had, we would have dissolved this years ago. What's going to dissolve it is treating human beings like human beings. You have to use language and communication that resonates with human beings. Punishment and reward does not. Logic does not. What resonates with us, and you and John talked about this in one of your last videos, stories. Human beings resonate with stories. When you hear stories about people, when you share your experiences with another person, when you ask them questions, then suddenly that person no longer becomes a Black person who has X, Y, and Z characteristics. They become a human being who is unique.
Yep.
So that is the solution, is to see people as unique human beings. C.S. Lewis, the famous author and theologian, he had a quote where he said that there are only two things that pierce the heart of man: beauty and pain.
Yep.
Those two things pierce our hearts. And every satisfying story has beauty and pain. And that's what pierces us. The story I just told with Javier, it had both of those elements. It had the pain of both of us being exposed to prejudice as children, but then you had the beauty of two kids dissolving that by building a relationship based on experiences. And that's why that story with Javier is going to stick with you far longer than if I gave you facts about him. If I said Javier is 5'4", which he was at the time, hopefully he's taller now, or if I said, oh, he's this height, he's this weight, he's at this address, here's his mother and father's name, you'll forget that in 5 minutes. But that story I told you is going to stay with you because it had beauty and it had pain and it pierced your heart, and it pierces all of our hearts. So we need to learn each other's stories. And if we learn each other's stories and we experience with each other and we ask each other those questions, then suddenly you are no longer a white guy to me. You're Colin, who is a compassion server, who wants to go around helping people, who wants to, you told this story when we talked earlier this week about how you want to get into an RV and just travel around helping people become who they are. That's who Colin is to me. The least important thing about you, Colin, is the color of your skin.
Absolutely.
Because the color of your skin tells me nothing about who you are and the value you bring.
Yes, and just while we're on that subject is like, so I was on LinkedIn for a while, well I still am, you know, and I was trying to promote a corporate business. And the corporate business, what I found, it was very difficult to come in, because when people use the word corporate business, it's like an elite group of people. Okay, now if people believe they're corporate, in my own belief, it's like they believe that they are higher above society. They are higher. So when people are coming in from a different angle, maybe a more holistic approach, or maybe a different approach that doesn't meet the corporate standards, I believe what happens is people then look down. So then they don't look at me as, they'll put me in a category that's not corporate, which is the exact same as being racist, really. We're not giving this guy a chance because he's not corporate. So it's just the same as we're not having this person in our life because they are a certain race. It's the exact same thing. Whereas if these people spoke to me and gave me 10 minutes of their time, they would see that they would understand that I would be able to help them and anyone else associated with them to find more of their uniqueness and more of their self, to create self-esteem or more self-esteem, you know, build that energy up in them. Now, I just mentioned self-love and you know, and us being able to go. So self-esteem is a massive thing. Now, this has just set us up as to where we're kind of looking to go, because this is a subject both you and I, like the Spider-Man comics, are very passionate about. Okay. And we've got this self-esteem, kind of self-love thing going on, this uniqueness. So would you like to explain your beliefs on self-esteem and racism, please?
Sure. Yes, thank you for bringing it up, because there may be some people watching right now, listening and saying, okay, that sounds great. I hear other people's stories, but how is that going to work? Will it work truly? Because we've been trying so many things for so many years and decades. Why would this work? And what would be the impediment to it? Because actually, when I brought up this solution that John and I have been talking about, and that, you know, he actually had been spearheading, and it made great sense to me. And I told her about it. She said, yeah, but it may not work for a couple reasons. And there are two possible impediments to this dissolving of racism. And one of them is based on the question that you and John asked in that video, which is, do you really want to solve racism? Do you really want to dissolve racism? And this solution will only work if the answer to that question is yes. If you really want to dissolve racism, then this solution of treating people as human beings and hearing their stories and experiences will work for you, because you have to intentionally do it. I mean, if I hypothetically said I had a prejudice against Asians, which I actually don't, because I actually have great friends who are Asian. I have one of my friends right now. She is a fantastic, beautiful, intelligent woman with a PhD who's fighting cancer right now, and is just, you know, so to me, I don't see her as I don't see Asian. I see my friend who is brave and beautiful and smart and is fighting cancer. Those are things up here, and all the way down here, oh yeah, she's Asian. That's, you know, but let's say hypothetically, I had a prejudice against Asians and I wanted to do something about that. Well, I can't expect someone to knock on my door one day and say, hi, I'm Asian. I hear you have a racism issue. I'm here to tell you my story. No, you've got to go out and intentionally interact with people and say, hey, tell me your story. And we'll do that. We love telling people our stories. When you and I when we first talked, what did we do? We kept telling each other our stories. We want to do that. No matter who you are, you want to tell someone else your story, because that's who we are as human beings. So we have to want to do that. Now, if you don't want to do that, then that will be a huge impediment to this. If your self-esteem is so low that that you put the color of your skin when you happen to claw your way out of your mother's womb, if that is the if that is the highest value, or the thing you value the most about yourself, if that's the only value you believe you have, then you don't want this solution. Why? Because when racism is dissolved, if we begin to treat people with respect and treat everyone equally as humans, and then you no longer have the facade in your mind that I'm better than someone else because of my race. So if racism goes away, your value goes away, because the only value you have, again, is the color of skin that you happen to be born with, which you had nothing to do with when you squirted out of your mother's womb.
Yeah.
And that means you have low, or I would actually say no self-esteem, because you have no other intrinsic value other than the least important thing about you, which is how you look. So if that is who you are, if you are a hardcore racist and you believe that you have no value outside of your skin color, then the last thing you want to do is dissolve racism. So that's impediment number one, which we can talk a little bit more about. Impediment number two is that it's going to take time. This solution does not happen overnight. Even though I was able to dissolve my prejudices towards Javier, I still have those other trees that were connected to those negative facts. And it took time for me to meet other people who happen to be Mexican, who I also got along with, and to make those connections with the individual unique people stronger than those negative connections, to the point where those negative connections are irrelevant now, to the point, I think I told you before, I have a very small circle of friends, because again, I'm a perceiver teacher. We don't tend to be quite as popular as compassion people like you, because you love making people feel better, and that's great. Me, I want to show people where they're wrong so they can be more right. And people don't like being told that they're wrong. So I have a very small circle of friends, but I will say that half of those friends happen to be Hispanic, Mexican, and actually Colombian. But that's not who they are to me. Who they are to me, one of them is an administrator perceiver. He's a provocateur, and I love him because he's always challenging me. Another one is compassion server like you. And he's the person I go to when I have a problem, because I know he's going to meet that need and help me feel better and help me grow and bear my pain. I have another friend who is server compassion. So he wants to meet the need, and he does that by bearing pain. He's actually he's kind of the foil of our group. He wants to relieve tension. So whenever I'm having an intense discussion with the administrator perceiver and he's provoking me and I'm going back and forth with him, he comes in and makes a joke about himself to relieve that tension, and we need him. And that's who they are to me. And all the way at the bottom of who they are to me is the fact that they have brown skin. because that tells me nothing. So the point is, number one, you have to want to dissolve racism, and number two, you have to be willing to give it time. If you want an instantaneous solution, not going to happen. And that's what we're trying to do with our current robot solution, where we believe that if we protest hard, if we defund police, if we give more training, more sensitivity training, if we put a clever meme on Facebook, or if we learn more about the history of other people, that's going to just overnight change people. But it's not going to. As I said, no, you cannot use that kind of logic on a Klansman where he'll say, you know what, you're right, I'm going to stop being a Klansman tomorrow. It's not going to work that way. It's going to take time.
And just while you're on that there, so the way that I believe that we change the habits of a lifetime is to be the change, you know, and the way that we can program our unconscious brain, I believe, two ways, is repetition and hypnosis. Now, you can imagine the whole world going for hypnotherapy, not, right? So the best way, I believe, for people to make the changes that are needed is to be the change. So that means if you have a prejudice, it could be physically going to speak to somebody of a certain race and getting to know them, asking them their story. And then, as you say, it's changing these dendrites and creating these stronger connections because they want to get to know that human being. You know, when we get to tell people, no, you're wrong, no, you're wrong, no, you're wrong. Yes, we know racism is wrong. We understand that. But to be the change is the only way to dissolve it, you know, and it's getting to know this person again. So when we've got defund the police are taught a certain way when they go through training, okay? They have had that programmed into them to understand how to be a police officer, but they've also had their upbringing, which will then, that could be the fact is that not a policeman is racist, but it's the person behind the police officer badge that's being racist, and that could be due to their upbringing or their experiences, you know. So it's about getting behind the badge and getting to the person. But also, it's about when they're arresting people, they are just taking these people at face value, and then what they're not doing is they're going, okay, what's happened here? They're just going, oh, we're programmed to think this, and they're going ahead and taking action on that, which again is wrong. But again, it's all down to the programming. And I believe, as you say, it's not going to be a thing that can be done overnight, but we can consciously make a difference and make a change that will unconsciously change the brains of ourselves and others forever. Because your conscious brain, as John's discussed with yourself and myself and anybody else that listens, the 10% of your conscious brain is the steering wheel. The unconscious brain is the car. So all you can do is drive it to where you want to go. Now, for someone to tell you, and I spoke about this in one of the videos with John, when somebody is telling you no, 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 and they're taking control of your steering wheel, of your 10% of your brain, you're not doing the work. So the way in order, I believe, for this to be done is to take the steering wheel back, you understand it's wrong, and start to steer it into places that you haven't been before. You know, taking these roads, and putting everything into a kind of metaphor, it's taking these new roads, opening up new pathways of your brain, touching on making new dendrites, you know, and understanding that you can change this program. And that is how, again, as we both agreed, that we'll dissolve racism. Because when we look at people as human beings, I know, so we've got the Black Lives Matters, then we've got people saying all lives matter, and then these people are now racist because they're not agreeing with these people, and then there's protesters against protesters against protesters, but all we're doing is causing more hurt, more damage, you know, prolonging this 50, 60-year-old that we can remember kind of way of working that's clearly not working. And again, John spoke about the kind of 40 flip gap, and people have to create this themselves to understand the pattern. But again, that's exactly what you and I are talking about, just in different words. It's about changing the behaviours to create the new paths. Now, in terms of you and I, there's not one person in this world that I would say, I was talking to Ed Mabry tonight, he's a black guy from America. I would say, I was speaking to Ed Mabry tonight, there's this guy, he's awesome. We did this video on racism, we both get the same kind of attributes. You know, we've got the same outlook on the subject, and we really came together to try and allow people to see a different side of it. That would be my story. And then they'd be like, oh, cool. And you know, they can ask more questions. And then at the end of it, it might be, oh, and is he black? Is he white? Well, he's black. Cool. But again, that's not who Ed is. Ed was who I explained at the start. And there was something else you wanted to discuss about the self-esteem of people. So again, I'll hand it over to you because this is very, very interesting when we delve deeper, because I like your small picture. I could go big picture the whole night like I am, but when you just take the reins and you allow it to go small picture, it'll allow people to understand the self-esteem issues.
Okay. So your self-esteem, there are different levels. And I don't know, John, you talked about this before, but the high self-esteem is when let me start with the low, actually. When you have no self-esteem, you get pleasure. And you talked about this in your first video, you and John. Everyone does everything for happiness.
Yeah.
We want to be happy, and we all have a plan for happiness. And if you have no self-esteem, then you only get pleasure when you are being destructive towards others. And that's where a hardcore racist is someone with zero self-esteem, because they don't get pleasure by giving of themselves or any of their own value. They only get value when they are being destructive towards people who don't look like them. So that is a sign. So whether you are just a manure farmer in Alabama, or whether you are a CEO of a corporation who doesn't want to hire anyone who doesn't look like him on the board of directors or in their C-suite, you are showing that at least in one area of your life, you have no self-esteem, because you're only getting pleasure by denying benefits to others. You only get pleasure by being destructive. Someone who has low self-esteem, the mark of that is that you're only happy when you're affirmed by someone beneath you.
Yeah.
And so people who like a woman or man, for that matter, who gets a one-night stand, you just want that to get, you're getting affirmed by someone who you don't want to get to know, who's someone who's beneath you. If you're on Instagram and you put provocative pictures up there so that you can get compliments from people who you don't know, that's a sign of low self-esteem. Yeah. So then there's mid self-esteem, people who get pleasure by being affirmed from someone higher than them. So if your boss gives you a compliment, if someone who's better looking than you tells you that you're good looking, if someone who is smarter than you tells you that you're smart, you feel good, then you get happiness then. So that's a mid self-esteem. A person who is of high self-esteem is a person who gets pleasure and thinks more highly of you because they see the goodness in you. When you have high self-esteem, you feel better about the other person when they affirm you. So if I have high self-esteem and Colin says, hey, Ed, you're smart, instead of me feeling better about myself, I feel better about Colin, because I say, wow, Colin gets it. Yeah. Colin understands this. So I feel better about you because you see something in me. So when you affirm me, I don't feel better about me, I feel better about you. That's high self-esteem. And that's where we all should be striving to get. Feeling better about other people when they affirm us instead of us feeling better about ourselves. Because when it comes down to happiness, and again, you and John talked about this in your first video, happiness is all tied to your expectations. If your expectations are exceeded, you're happy. If your expectations are not met, you're unhappy. Yep. But if you have high self-esteem, you're not expecting anyone to affirm you for your sake. You aren't looking for that. Yep. And when you do get affirmed, you don't feel better about yourself, you feel better about them. So your happiness is not tied to other people affirming you to feel better. Yes. Your happiness is external towards other people. I feel great about you because you see something in me that I already know. I already have high self-esteem. I already know that I have value. And if you see my value, then I feel better about you, because that tells me that you're where I am.
They're looking for it. They're looking for you. And this is what I speak to all my clients about. And I speak to every one of them that come through. I don't speak to them all the same because everyone's unique, but I will say one thing to them all. And that is, I don't see you, I see your potential. Okay. Right. Now, if you can see someone's value and potential at the same time, it says it's for me, because most people, and we'll go for the 94% that you and I and John have all spoke about, are looking for flaws to make themselves feel better, or to look for judgment so that they don't have to like them. And you know, and this is what goes. It's actually saddening to watch, because if everybody was doing what we are just speaking about just now, there wouldn't be any. There would literally be no problems in the world.
I want to bring up one more thing really quickly. That is a form of that low self-esteem, that low thought process that actually seems benign. And I hear it a lot. And I want people who believe this, or who say this, or who know people who say this, to understand how destructive this is. And that's when people who say, I don't see color. Now that sounds good, but what they're really doing is they are absolving. They're not trying to resolve, solve, or dissolve the problem. They're trying to absolve. I don't see color, because that's the biggest crock. I'm not going to use bad language. That's the biggest crock. That's crap. Of course you see color. That's not the point. I mean, we see physical. That's the first thing we see about someone. I mean, if a beautiful woman were to walk into your home or my home right now, we both say, oh my God, look at that beautiful girl. Of course we notice that.
Yeah.
So it's not that you don't see color, it's where do you value it?
Yes.
When we first talked, we had a video chat earlier this week, and I saw you, and I saw that you were a white man. But that was the least important thing. So of course I saw the color, but the thing was that I didn't put that on a high level. That was the least important thing about you. I wanted to know who Colin was. So it's not about not seeing color and trying to absolve it. It's about where do you put that on the hierarchy, and that should be, again, the lowest on the hierarchy.
Yeah, no, I love it. And just going back to the conversation that we had during the week, we spoke for a relatively long period of time. We didn't even realize it, you know, and that just shows the position that you and I are at mentally, and in terms of the way that our brain works. We were delving in, we were telling stories, we were asking questions. Asking questions is a huge thing, you know, because if we don't ask questions, we make judgments.
Right.
Make judgments, and unless it's a danger, I'm judging that this is danger and you're getting out of the situation. Any other judgment is wrong, in my belief, because we have to ask questions, and that is how we can get the flow and we get to understand between the two people where we connected. Now, last week, you're a black guy from America, I'm a white guy from Scotland. Now, when we spoke, the amount of things that we had, there was times that you said, you're just like my dad when you said that. Then we were speaking about whiskey because it's Scottish. We were talking, we've got John Lenhart and the way that he's spoken it, and he's grabbed the two of our hearts with his workings and his, you know, and just changed our lives. Well, he's allowed us to change our own lives with giving us the words to our thoughts, you know. And there was so much that, I mean, we could literally talk forever, you and I, because we've got so much energy. We build energy.
And when someone asks me, tell me about Colin, I'm going to talk about a whole bunch of things, and I will not probably mention, and Colin's white. I don't even think that would even come up, because that's not who you are to me. Not that I don't notice it. Of course I notice that, but the least important part is that Colin is this great guy who's a compassion server, who is into healing and making people better. And we talk a lot about stuff. We talk about conspiracy theories, and we talk about a whole bunch of, those are all the things that you are. And now that I know you like that, if I had negative branches on my Scottish tree, which I don't, because again, you guys invented Scotch. How could I ever be angry at the Scots? You guys invented Scotch. But if I did, that would be, the connection I have with you would be so much stronger than any negative connection I had. And that is how you dissolve. And again, I want to make one thing clear, because there may be some people watching right now who are very active in the arena of justice and in social justice and racism and trying to solve it. And they might, I don't want them to be offended and think that we believe that everything they're trying to do is with poor intentions, even though because we've said a lot of these so-called solutions are making things worse. I don't want to discount the fact that you're trying to do something, but what we want to let you know is that look at this way, because give it an honest try, because this is the only solution that is really going to work. Not that you have poor intentions. I think you have the best of intentions. I think trying to make the police get better training and defunding certain areas and putting more funding towards community outreach, those are great things. You know, putting up the memes on Facebook with quotes from Dr. King or from Gandhi or from Frederick Douglass or from whomever, I'm not saying those are bad things. What we're saying is that they haven't been working. You have great intentions, but these intentions are not only working, but things are not working. Things are still getting worse. So I want you to think contrastively and ask yourself, is there a possibility that my solution, as good as my intentions are my solutions actually making not working and making things worse? And if they are, is there a possibility that the solution that Ed Mabry and Colin Stevenson and John Lenhart have been talking to you about, is there a possibility at least that there's some merit to it? And give it an honest try. Think about what we've just said. Think about any category you've had someone in, be it a racial category or a social category or a professional category that you thought was negative. And once you got to know someone in that category and you heard their stories, think about how your vision, your view of that category changed. And if you have any example of that in your life, then you are tacitly admitting that this way to dissolve racism can work. And if it can, then contact Colin, contact John Lenhart, and learn more about this, because I'm tired of it, Colin. I mean, I'm going to just speak from my heart emotionally, which I'm a perceiver. I'm not an emotional guy, so I don't do this very much. But I have two children, two boys who are obviously both Black. They are growing, and I fear for them as they grow up in a society. If we don't dissolve this problem, when my boys are teenagers and they get in their first ticket, I'm hoping to have a good experience, or at least, not a good experience. I hope they have a safe experience, but I'm worried that they might end up like George Floyd. They might end up like Tamir Rice, who was a young Black kid who was shot because he had a toy gun and he was Black. I fear for them. I want this dissolved. I'm tired of solutions that don't work. So I want us to start trying solutions that actually do work. And it really frustrates me when I hear things like all lives matter. And my question to you, if you believe all lives matter, do Black people have lives? Then Black lives matter.
Yeah.
If all lives matter and I have a life, then my life matters too. So that's why I think that's just a ridiculous way of putting it, because we're not saying only Black lives matter. We're saying our lives matter as well as anyone else's life. And of course, saying all lives matter is like your house being on fire and the fire department coming and putting water on every other house on the block and doing yours last. Why? Because all houses matter. Well, yes, but why don't we put some water on the house that's on fire? All houses matter, but we should focus on the house that's burning down.
Yeah.
If you go to a doctor with a broken arm and he says, go home, all your bones matter. Of course, all my bones matter, but the bone that's broken, my broken arm, is the one that needs attention.
Yeah.
So these protests and these counter protests, they're unproductive because we're still treating people like categories. Treat people like human beings. Ask yourself, how would you feel if you had to be afraid that your son or daughter might not come home alive because of how they look?
Yep. And I love that. And beautiful, because as you say, you are a perceiver teacher. So for you to come across with something emotional like that, I very much appreciate that. And I know it's not easy, especially when you know how many people are going to watch it. So I appreciate you for that, and I acknowledge it, and how can I not like you it is, But what you're saying is 100% bang on. Yes, everything needs to be kind of work, but we need to work on ourselves before we can work on larger situations, And I believe to build our own self-esteem up, once our self-esteem gets to a level, we would have dissolved all of these things. So trying to put a blanket over any category or any amount of protesters or police or any of these things, I believe is wrong, because you're treating people like a herd of sheep or a herd of cattle, And when you're trying to treat a herd, you've got to get the sheepdog in to try and move, But if we've got every living being trying to build themselves up, they will naturally build other people up, which will naturally dissolve most of the issues that are on in the world. And, and you've got a beautiful heart. I love what you said, and I love everything that we've spoken about tonight. And I really genuinely hope people find some value in this and they try to understand where we are both coming from, because we're coming from a place of love. We're coming from a place of happiness within ourselves, you know, and we want to help people on the level. Because just before we go, I would just like to touch on something that I've spoken to with John. I'm compassion server, okay? I feel people. I feel what's wrong. I feel people's pain. And the server, I want to bear it. I want to take it all away from them so that they don't suffer anymore. And this is any human being. I would just like to point this out, okay? It doesn't matter what they look like or where they're from. I would do it for anybody that was suffering if I had the power to do so, or I was in a position to do so. Now, I didn't go to a protest. I didn't go to, I didn't start posting a black meme or a black screen on my computer. It wasn't because I don't want to help. It's because I want to dissolve it. I don't want to keep it going by keeping this fight going. You know, I don't want it to be part of the thing that I believe that's keeping it going. I would like to dissolve it from down to zero. And again, it's where you and I are both kind of sitting here. So would you like to give us a couple of parting words before we go?
Sure.
A last message.
Thank you. So we've talked all about the race thing, and you made a great point that it starts within you. And I think another great way to dissolve, if racism is, again, we talk about categories and putting people in categories and treating them like categories instead of people, instead of human beings. But also we talked about how racism is a sign, an effect of low or no self-esteem. So the other solution to dissolve it internally, looking inward, is to find out your uniqueness. Find out your value. So if you realize it, if you're a person who believes that all their value is tied to their skin color, which is, again, the lowest common denominator, if you learn the value that you have as your own unique human being, if you find out, again, you and John are going to talk about, I know, the intrinsic drivers, and that's just a part of who you are. If I know that you, Colin, are a compassion server, then I know how to interact with you, but that still doesn't tell me exactly who your city, but that's not your address. So compassion server is the city you live in, but who you are is your address, is your uniqueness. So you want to find out who you are and the value that you bring. I'm Perceiver Teacher. That's my city. But who I am is I'm someone who wants to teach you, to make you aware of where you're wrong so that you can be more right. My uniqueness is I want everyone to be right. I don't want anyone to ever be wrong. And I do that by teaching you and showing you where you're wrong so you can be right. My point of that is find out who you are uniquely. Find out the value you have, not as your race, not as your in your heritage necessarily. Not that that's wrong. I mean, I love my heritage, and I think it's beautiful, but I'm more than that. And the value I bring is my uniqueness, and that's what I can bring to the world. And if you know who you are and the value that you bring to the world outside of the color of your skin, that's going to dissolve your racism, because you will no longer value your skin color at the top. That'll be way down here, and who you are is up here. So the solution is find out who you are uniquely. Understand that whoever you are, if I'm talking to a racist right now, your skin color is not the most important thing about you. But the most important thing about you is the value you bring. You bring value to the world. You can help people uniquely. No one can help people in the world like you can, because no one is you. You have unique value. It's not tied to your skin color. That's not important. And just work on learning who you are and bringing that to others so that we can all benefit from your unique value.
Absolutely beautiful, my friend. I'm not going to even add anything onto that, because that was just perfect. I loved it. So, Ed, listen, thank you so much for joining me tonight. It's been such an absolute pleasure speaking with you again, you know, and I'm looking forward to further chats with you, and hopefully we can do some more videos, because you're a very loving, interesting guy. And I love the fact that you've not tried to make me right, because I must be kind of half right tonight. But no, it's been great and it's been lovely. So thank you so much for your time, and I'll really, really look forward to speaking to you again.
Yeah, I think we have tons of stuff to talk about, and I look forward to talking to you about all kinds of stuff again.
Yeah, well, listen, thank you so much, Ed. Have a good evening, mate.
You too.